I usually don't like horror games. I normally don't like horror-themed anything. Movies, TV shows, games, you name it. A lot of this has to do with how cheaply made a lot of horror tends to be. Walking through a corridor in silence only for creepy music to pop up followed by a jump scare doesn't fit my definition of fun. That doesn't mean I hate the genre, only what lazy cash grabs have done to it. It's for this reason and many others that Resident Evil 7 is my favorite horror game in a very long time. Resident Evil 7 is simultaneously a refreshingly original take on the horror genre, a love letter to films and games that inspired it, and a damn good game in its own right. That being said, while I am familiar with the majority of Resident Evil lore and have seen a playthrough of the remake of Resi 1, this is the first game in the series that I've played myself, so I may not fully comprehend all of the small details and references in the game, but even without that, this game is great. Resident Evil 7 is a game about Ethan Winters, whose fiancée has contacted him after being missing for 3 years, telling him that she can be found at the Baker family house in Louisiana. Ethan immediately travels to the estate to find Mia, but encounters countless horrors instead, including a Jekyll and Hyde-esque transforming Mia, a demented and unkillable Baker family, and horrifying tar monsters. Ethan must then fight his way out of the Baker estate, learning more about the dark secrets it holds along the way. The first major change to the series is immediately evident. It's the switch to a first-person perspective. I've seen a lot of people online complaining about this, saying it's not true Resident Evil, and true or not, it doesn't detract from the game's quality at all. While the story is almost entirely self-contained and only ties into the full series towards the end, little things let the new perspective adds or twists on the old act as an overall improvement. The story itself is thoroughly entertaining and frightening, drawing elements from horror classics such as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Saw, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and many others. There are even some great quotes thrown in for good measure.
Move, baby. Gotta start moving.
The most impressive thing about the story, however, is how seamlessly it transitions from a slow-paced horror story to a more action-heavy game towards the third act. A lot of people have said that the game is too easy towards the end and loses its fear factor, and while I can see where they're coming from, I disagree that this is entirely bad. While I do prefer the original tone and gameplay style, the shift in how the game makes the player feel does offer additional variety, which is important in a horror game. With that being said, the first hour or two of the game are the strongest by far, offering a near-perfect experience. The characters are mostly great as well. The Bakers are sufficiently creepy with a combination of terrifying attributes and cheesy comedic gold that the game balances masterfully. Mia offers a great emotional tie to the story and serves as both adequate motivation throughout the game and as a great character in her own right. Ethan, however, is a bit bland. I understand that with the first-person perspective, the developers felt the need to make Ethan an embodiment of the player, but his lack of development just makes for a pretty weak protagonist. The voice acting is good for the most part as well. The Bakers and Mia offer some excellent line delivery, once again perfectly balancing between the terrifying and the hilarious. Again though, Ethan is the weak link here. He reacts to extreme circumstances and his own pain with a very cavalier attitude, and ends up being more bland as a result.
Oh, come on, Ethan. What do you say?
Fuck!
Still, his interactions with Mia and the Bakers do give him some semblance of a personality, and give the voice actor an opportunity to grant Ethan some humanity. Overall, despite a few missteps, especially towards the end, the story manages to be engaging, entertaining, scary, and even surprisingly touching. The scares in the game are well placed and respect the player's intelligence. Rather than go for a bunch of cheap jump scares with loud noises, this game instead messes with the player's head, and it has intense moments of being chased around to make the player more scared of what could potentially happen rather than what is happening. Sometimes there will be a moment that causes the player to expect a jump scare, and when nothing happens, it just serves to add to the feeling of unease and the fear of the unknown. While there are jump scares in the game, they're surprisingly rare and unexpected, and that's exactly what makes them so effective. The graphics don't slouch either. Resident Evil 7 may be the most disgustingly beautiful game I've ever played. The character models, environments, and lighting effects are so well crafted that they only serve to enhance the feeling of dread when walking through a door into the unknown. The way the light glistens off of water and damp surfaces, and the waves formed by wading through the water are some of the best I've ever seen. And when you get to see some of the villains up close and personal, they just make your skin crawl. The graphics are so good that when a mediocre texture or odd looking part of the environment that would be acceptable in any other game shows up, it stands out in contrast. The environments are carefully crafted as well. Having to go through each door yourself makes each new room a potential threat, meaning each door surpassed is another fear faced. While the enemies could have used more than 2 different varieties, they were sufficiently creepy and well placed for the most part, except when they die and ragdoll around for a bit before disappearing. However, the set pieces and boss encounters alone make for a genuinely creepy and foreboding atmosphere throughout the entire game. Then there's the music, which is not only great as a set of tracks backing the gameplay, but also adds to the element of horror. Sometimes it gets your heart pumping as you're being stalked through the house. Other times it'll build up to a climax only to restart and become calm again, making you expect something about to happen and then question yourself. Other times it just completely cuts out to make for a truly dreadful moment. On top of that, the absolutely grotesque and disturbing sound effects made by the environment and monsters add not only another layer of unease, but also serve to alert the player to their surroundings. Gameplay-wise, Ressie 7 plays like a standard first-person survival horror game, but it adds many elements familiar to series veterans. Of course, you can dispatch enemies with your arsenal of weaponry, but the way in which you achieve that objective is up to you. With many parts of the game lacking sufficient ammo, sometimes stealthing around and avoiding detection is the best tactic. You still have classic Resident Evil crafting and combining of items to access new areas and assist in the journey, as well as some really fun, addictive puzzles that made me wish there were more. The highlight of the game, however, are the Bakers, and their absolutely insane boss fights. They can't be killed and instead have to be stunned, resulting in a feeling of powerlessness and fear of the next time a demented hillbilly comes for your life. Not only are the fights multi-layered and cleverly designed, but many offer multiple ways to go about taking your enemies down. The gameplay does have a few issues though. While the variety of weapons and ammo types is appreciated, they do get a bit too generous with the ammo towards the end, resulting in the game being too easy even after taking the action-oriented third act structure into consideration. Even the final boss is a bit of a joke. And while the Bakers can come after you regardless of obstacles by tearing down walls and doors, the monsters tend to be a bit less motivated after having a door slammed in their face. Resident Evil 7 is a refreshing take on the horror genre and exactly what a tiring series needed to regain lost steam. Its disturbingly imaginative world and story offer the player a fantastic experience that I hope continues with the series into the future, which is why Resident Evil 7 Biohazard gets a 9 out of 10. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe to see more Mighty reviews, dissections, and other great gaming content. And as always, have a mighty nifty day today.